We'll get started soon. Just setting up all these different technologies.
We're learning.
If you can type in the chat if you can hear us.
Resolved. Where's that? So some people have submitted questions for our talk. So if you're on early, we have 2 minutes. Congratulations, you're on early. We still have 2 minutes till we start. If you have questions you want us to address in this little chat that we're doing, type them down for us somewhere, whatever platform you're on. So if you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook, hi, Salukala, nice to see you, welcome. Such a fan. You're always with us for every event. So type in your questions that you want us to talk about, and we will be doing some love talks.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to work.
So take me out of the room. So we're trying to do everything all at the same time. So we're doing like Facebook, Instagram, not YouTube, right?
YouTube.
Oh, YouTube, Clubhouse.
Yeah, we're on Instagram.
Because everyone's like, I don't have Facebook, I don't have this, I don't know. So we're like, okay, let's just do it everywhere so everyone can see us. Yes? And nobody can see you on Instagram, Faizan, because you're not in the screen.
Because we want to be famous. Well,
there we go. You just have to get closer. There was that other question that person had said. Can you pull that one up? If you know where it is?
No, I have to open it.
Is it in your email?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get started here in about 1 minute when Faizan finds me one pre-submitted question that we had. Let's see where it is. And I'm going to jot it down. Okay, question. How can you help your spouse with? Okay.
So let's get started.
Let's do it.
So welcome, everyone. We're not sure who is actually watching, but if you are, welcome. This is one of 4, I guess, sessions that we're going to have in March. And so Saira and I recently ran a workshop, a 4-week workshop. Can you stop it?
I'm trying to make sure that they can see your face. Look, there's people waving.
It's okay. They can only see half.
Hi, people who are waving on Instagram.
They're not waving. It's for you to wave back at them.
I'm waving back.
So recently we finished a 4-week Love Talks workshop, and we just thought like 4 weeks is never enough. Mm-hmm. 4 years isn't enough. 14 years isn't enough. To kind of get through all of the relationship topics, and sometimes when we're talking about relationships, it comes across as us talking about as a couple. I mean that's what that workshop was for, but it's how we individually show up in this world as well, right? So it could be a relationship with, of course, our parents. It could be a relationship in our intimate relationships, but it's really how we're going to show up. So the focus of this is these talks that we're going to be here for about an hour. We'll see how long we go. Is really to focus on that our self-improvement, right? How we're going to show up in these relationships, and it could be a relationship with yourself as well. So we've got some questions. We'll start answering those questions. If you are online, if you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. Go ahead and type in.
If you're with us live, because if you ask us questions after,
we'll try to address them
in the next one.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this live, then type in your questions about like anything you want to know, anything. We might not have an answer, but we'll try based on what we've learned about relationships. Do you want to tell them who we are? Do people know who we are? Well, I think you know, right?
If not, well, yeah. My name's Faizan. This is Saira. She's the boss. I just do what she tells me to. Most of the times. No, I don't.
Do I tell you to do things anymore?
Yeah. See, we're not addressing that. That wasn't one of our questions, so we're not going to address that right now.
So living in the past is one thing to be aware of. You treat someone like they're the same person that they were 14 years ago and they've changed, then that's a problem.
All right, so anyways, my name's Faizan. This is Saira. I am a technology consultant as well as a coach, working with people on identifying their patterns and seeing where they can improve in their lives, and just kind of how to move forward, right? So if you feel stuck in some places in your life, whether it could be work, it could be relationships, it could be with your kids, but if you feel stuck, I help identify those patterns so you can then move forward, right? Just observing the patterns, being able to observe the patterns, that's a great skill set to have.
And I am a psychotherapist, registered clinical counselor, and I work with a lot of people come to me, they find me because they want to incorporate their spiritual beliefs and their cultural values into therapy. So we're taking, really whole person approach, and not only whole person, but including your families and the systems that you're in and all of those pieces. So it's not just about you feeling better about you. It's also about making sure that the context that you're in is also supported as you grow and change. So that's me and you. And as Faizan mentioned, this was really a support, like a little extra support for our couples that joined our couples group. So hopefully some of you are on here with us. If you are, say hi in the chat so we know you're here. And then also for anybody else who wants to just chat on a Sunday afternoon around couples. So we've got Ivy, we've got Narm, we've got Salu on one platform, and then we have some other people.
No, they're not on anymore.
Oh, they left.
Joined and
they're like, we're out of here. You guys aren't saying anything. Okay, let's start saying something so people don't leave. How about? Okay, we're going to start with some of the questions that were submitted. Oh, Carrie's here. Hi, Carrie. Good to see you. Oh, look, she said hi to you too, not just to me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Usually Saira gets all the glory. I just do all the work in the background.
All the technical support, absolutely. Okay, so there was 2 questions that came up before that we're going to start with. So we'll start with this first one, which is this one or this one? This one. This one came first. Okay. So the question is, how do you help your spouse if they have depression or anxiety? Like, why can't they snap out of it? I guess the question is, if I have depression or anxiety, and my spouse thinks I should be able to snap out of it, what do we do about that? That's the first question.
Okay. I'll let you start it, and then I'll, add my 2 cents. Well,
I will say we can probably see, Aman and Khadija are here. Hi, welcome. So good to see you. So yeah, here we are. So one of us has depression and the other person is dealing with the person who has depression, and the other person thinks this person should be able to snap out of it. That's how I'm understanding the question. And I can speak from the side of the person who has the lived experience of mental illness. So as somebody who lives with depression myself, it's really hard because not only are you struggling just to make it through the day, you're also feeling bloody guilty about the state that you're in. And then on top of that, if you have your partner feeling like you should just snap out of it, that's a lot of pressure and it's a lot of pain. So for the person who submitted this question, I feel your irritation, frustration, heaviness about how to support, like if my partner doesn't get it, what do I do? So I can speak to it from that side, and there's really not much I could do, right? One of the things I had to do was find support outside of here. So I had to actually connect with another person who had depression, who understood what it was like to have depression, and talk to her and have her as my main support rather than my husband, who didn't have he could be really compassionate towards me, but he didn't really get it, right?
No. Yeah. Having lived that experience of telling somebody to snap out of it, wasn't very full of compassion at that time.
But where was it coming from? Where did it come from?
Yeah. So that for us, for at least for you and I, mm-hmm. It was a cultural thing where first of all, it didn't get talked about, right? So that was one. 2, there is a person with a PhD in mental health and therapy. Right?
Who's depressed? Can't you, don't you know better, girl?
Yeah,
you know all about this stuff. You should be able to just smooth it.
Yeah, it's like you have the tools, right? You have you have the tools, obviously, to be to get out of it, to snap out of it, right? Like to use the word snap out of it. Yeah, we don't want people live. Sorry,
I don't
we're not having people show up live on camera.
But type your questions in the messages. Yeah.
So I think when we're dealing with that depression, at least from my perspective, it was one, I didn't know how to deal with it, right? I didn't know it wasn't a disease that was talked about. It wasn't a disease that was
like diabetes.
No, and it wasn't a disease that was accepted, right? That
wasn't even seen as a disease.
It wasn't even seen as a disease, right? So I think I know from my perspective, I had to go get support. Now, this is not something, you can't get somebody to go get support, right? Like I had to learn, I had to go do some educating of myself. I had to go look at my belief systems. I had to see, I had to deal with this fact that why am I seeing this person as weak? Why am I seeing my partner as somebody who is weak and can't get through it?
Do you think also it has something to do with like saving, like wanting to save me and not knowing how, or no?
Yeah,
like a knight in shining armor.
Yeah, thing? I'll speak for myself. I don't know if it's.
I'm just asking about you.
No, if it's a man's thing or not. But yeah, there's this thing about it, right? Like in a partnership, you want to save the other person.
You're gonna help them at least.
Well,
or save them.
Yeah, but there is this thing about like I can help them, and why can't I? Right? And then there's this helpless feeling that I got to, where it's like I couldn't really help them, right? I had to go to work with the thought, with the feeling that I might come home and my wife might not be there, right? Like she was having suicidal thoughts, so it's like it was just something that I had to kind of work through, and I had to go get support, and I had to look at my own.
What did your support look like?
Yeah, so for me, it was one, I had to go read up on depression, because I didn't know, right? I just didn't know it. I just didn't know. I knew the words. I knew the words got thrown around, like, oh yeah, I just feel depressed today, right? Like the words got thrown around, but the actual deep, the pain, I just didn't know about. I couldn't relate to that pain, and it's not a pain that you can somehow pinpoint either, right? Like, so with diabetes, okay, I can check maybe the sugar level, or with a heart condition, maybe I can do something with it. There just wasn't no diagnosis, right? Like, so what Saira was going through versus what somebody else was going through, like you just couldn't compare, right? Like there wasn't a number. I think people try to give you numbers, but there just wasn't a number. So I know for me, I had to go get that support myself. So yeah, read books. I was attending men's groups regularly, and just being around those men, and some of those men having depression as well. So just being around somebody outside of this one, it's like, because I'm very, I was invested here. Mm-hmm. Right, I was invested here, but if I can just kind of see somebody else experiencing and seeing what they experience, the words that they use, like, oh, okay.
You don't take it personally.
I'm not taking it personally, but I'm also understanding the words that they're using. I'm educating myself to be able to say, okay, I need to have this conversation with Saira, and I was cruel at times about it, because I said, right, like, why are you going on medication? It doesn't make any sense.
I cried to my doctor about it, that my husband doesn't even believe, my husband and my mom were against me going on medication. And I was upset, like I was so hurt by that, because I thought, like, I have tried everything. This is my last resort. This is not the first thing I'm trying. Yeah. And it was so hard to convince myself to go on medication, and then to have to do that without support of Faizan and my mom. It was just like, but I just, at least, like I said, I had my sister. I found someone else who had the same thing, and she got me through. And I had a good girlfriend of mine, Jacqueline. She was there for me. Another friend who was Linda, who was there, who had depression. So these people who were around me, who they knew what was happening. They weren't just they'd been there. I want to address Carrie's question here.
Before we go there, I want to address one thing, right? I think it's sometimes, especially in intimate relationships, we feel like we need to be each other's best friends.
Because that's what everyone says. I married my best friend. I married my best friend.
No, find some other friends.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can't. I can't listen to everything Sarah has to tell me. Like one, there might be.
He says I talk too much. Like this is what he's telling you
No,
all, that I'm
it's not
talking
too much.
and he can't deal with all I have to. Like that's what you're trying to say, right?
And she loves putting words in my mouth as well. So no, in reality, it's just it's that there will be times I take things personally, and I can't, right? Like I have my own issues that I'm bringing into this relationship. So it's like there's no way I can be unbiased all the time, right? With everything that's going on. So find support that's outside. Now, what I will say, I think we talked about this in the in our relationship workshops, was find people who are actually invested in your relationship,
right?
And you're invested in the relationship succeeding, right? So if you need to go outside, that's fine, but like, you know, don't turn into a bitch and moan session, right? I mean, you can obviously get it out, but then that person.
But with people who are going to build up your relationship, not chip away at it over time. So whoever you choose to speak to, ensuring that that person's actually invested in this foundational relationship.
Right. So now let's address.
Okay, so question from Carrie: what if you can see your spouse's anxiety and depression, but they're not ready to admit it or deal with it? How can you really help them to seek help or even just admit that it is there?
What are you looking at me? Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. I'll speak from my experience. You can't force somebody to go look at their problems, right? And if that's a label I can put on it.
So I want to change the scope a bit. Okay, so let's say instead of depression and anxiety that you're seeing in your spouse, what you're actually seeing is addiction. So maybe you're seeing, a drug or alcohol addiction. Maybe you're seeing a work addiction. Maybe you're seeing a food addiction, right? Maybe you're seeing these other types of ways that this person is hooked on something. Now, in my experience, what I've found is when I bring those things up, all I'm faced with is defensiveness. Because until Faizan is ready to admit that he has fill in the blank.
Food addiction. What else did you say?
I didn't say anything.
What else did you add?
Work addiction.
Work addiction. What else?
That's it. Just those two. But until he owns it, until he says, you know what? Yes, this is something I need to look at in myself. I'm just beating my head against a wall, and it's just going to frustrate me. So what I do is when I notice the other person is experiencing something that's triggering me and aggravating me, then I have to look back into myself and say, because sometimes or often it's easier to fix someone else than actually look at your own process, right? It's easier for me to say, oh, Faizan, you have a food addiction, rather than saying, why am I so bored that all I can focus on is Faizan's life? Maybe I need to get a hobby. And I've joined a writing group, writing with Taslim Sundays at 10 a.m. It's amazing. It's open to all. Just a little plug because it's a great group. Mm-hmm. So I've joined a writing group. I'm doing I've started a course. And so it's about like me looking at how can I make my life better? And when he's ready, right? When that person's ready to tell you, okay, I have depression or I have anxiety, okay, well, then we can move ahead together. But in the meantime, can I be the most balanced partner that I could be while they're kind of in the valley, right? Because what a lot of us do is we just join them in the pain rather than saying, okay, what do I need to do to get steady and stable so when they are ready for help, I'm here to walk with them, rather than nagging and poking and nagging and poking. And even if you don't do that out loud, people can feel it when you're doing it inside your mind energetically.
Right. And there's this concept. Can you talk about the concept of standing in the fire, like the sacred fire? Because that's also kind of related, right? Like I just have to show up and trust that like I'm not going to take things personally and all of those things. But can you talk about that sacred fire?
Sure. So the sacred fire, it's a concept by Dr. Chuck Spezzano. And he talks about how when we truly are invested in someone, we truly deeply love them. And there's a bond there and there's a deep connection there. And there's no kind of like, it's not about in a violent situation or an abusive situation, then you need to bring in professional support, right? So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, the day-to-day kind of like spats that we have with each other, that resentment that builds up about all these other things in life. And then we all over our partner.
You've only done that a couple times.
But when I was pregnant, so it doesn't count. Remember when I peed?
Right.
Oh my god! In the middle of the hardwood floor.
Not the live stream for.
But that's it. We do. We're like, this person's gonna see all the crazy, nasty things that nobody else in the world will ever see, right? Like me vomiting on him. I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh
Well,
yeah, the
just
resentment.
shows,
Okay,
yeah.
so things are building, and then they come out. And so, as the partner, there's an opportunity to hone your own inner peace and inner presence. And that's something Chuck calls standing in the sacred fire. So one way of thinking about it is somebody's throwing baseballs at you, right? And so if somebody's throwing a baseball at you, you have three choices. You either let it hit you and leave a bruise and then talk about that bruise and nurse the bruise and feel bad about the bruise, or take out your bat and be like, oh yeah, you're going to say that? Well, and hit back, right? Which again, is like, and it just escalates things. Or you take out your glove and you just catch it. So standing in the fire is when things are coming at you and you're just catching it and catching it and catching it. And the reason he talks about fire is because you will feel uncomfortable emotion inside of you, which often feels hot. So shame, embarrassment, anger, you might feel a heat that's rising up or a prickliness or a tightness inside of you. And you just stand there and you experience the emotion. And you don't need to run from it. You don't need to throw something out of your mouth. You can just stand there, feel the discomfort, and let it burn, let it burn, let it burn, let it burn.
And you're just showing up for that person as they are, right? So if the kind of going back to the point of if you're not able to actually relate, or you're not on the same page, like, you know, you're doing your work, but the other person is not, then it's really about you wanting and you being able to stand in the fire with them, just showing up as the best self that you can in that moment. Every day is not going to be perfect. Some days you're going to actually let the ball hit you. Some days you're going to take your bat out, and that's okay. It's just continuously showing up in that fire.
This kind of leads to another question, one of our earlier questions that came in. So that's this. How do we communicate through those moments when you have both drawn your lines in the sand? This is such a hard place to be when you are really seeing things so differently and you just can't get past it, and it's not something you can let go of or walk away from. It needs to be resolved, but you don't know how because neither of you will budge. So let's talk about that question.
Yeah, so I think that particular question, at some point, and I think it's kind of related to, you know, if you're kind of moving on and doing your own thing, but you still want some of that support from your partner, possibly. There's got to be this, you're gonna have to sit down. You're gonna have to confront this from a value perspective, right? So there's gonna be a conversation about values and beliefs, because there is a I know when we had like financial when we were in financial trouble. We had to have a conversation. We should have had it earlier. We were both kind of
putting on the blinders.
Don't
look at that. Yeah. Don't look at that scary topic.
Yeah. And really we had to have that conversation about what does, and again, I'm just using money as an example. We had to do the same thing with raising kids, household duties and chores and, work-life balance, right? And we're still having those conversations, it seems like. But it's like, what is that value and what is a belief system that we're walking in with, right? One of the things for me, I know was, I'm going to use work as an example here, is that's where I got my value from, right? My worthiness was how well I was performing at work. And some days wasn't feeling very worthy of much, just because I had a bad day at work. But that started translating then into home, right? Like it moved in, it transitioned into home and not feeling worthy at home, and that actually impacted our relationship. And it's like, oh, I'm not worthy of love because I'm struggling at work, right? So it was just, but that was a belief system that I had to find. I had to do some work on it and really talk about. Now,
so how does that relate to being stuck and both people putting down their lives?
Well, again, so I'm going back to that value and belief conversation. See, I think what was that stat that you share It's about 60 some percent.
Over 60%, yeah.
Over 60% of
Susan Pierce Thompson talks about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Susan Pierce Thompson from Brightline Eating, she, in one of her video blogs, talks about how over 60% of the issues between a couple will never get resolved. So an example might be, I want a fast car, he wants a safe car, or the opposite, right? Another example might be, I want to go to my family's for Christmas. He wants to go to his family's. So somebody's always giving in. And sometimes it's frustrating if it feels like it's the same person giving in all the time, so that we can get to that. But 60% of our fundamental things that are really, really important to us will not be shared by our partner. So one big one that came up for us was, where do we live, right? Faizan's always wanted to live like away in a small town, quiet. Well, first, no. Rewind. When we first met, he wanted to live in a bustling big city, and so the city that I was in was pretty boring. So we moved to this bustling big city, and then after some time, I fell in love with the bustling big city, and he changed, and he kind of wanted to live more like away in the mountains in a small town, and so we lived in the bustling big city because now we were doing my thing for a while, and then again we shifted to now we're living in a small town. So sometimes I'm going to be happy, sometimes he's going to be happy, and it's like you have to kind of make the most of it when you're not getting your when you're not getting your box checked off.
And again, I don't know if I would label it, I'm going to be happy one time. I'm not unhappy when I don't, when we were living in.
But you're getting what you want.
Yeah, we're getting.
Now, if you're not happy, that's that's on you, man. But at least you got what you wanted.
No, that's true. Right? I'm just saying, like, there's a value conversation that you need to have with your partner. Say, okay, what are we talking about here, right? Like, because if there's things that, again, finances, I was coming from this side and she was coming from this side, right? Like, I was talking from here and she's talking from here. So obviously we were not talking the same language. We weren't looking at the problem the same way. Mm-hmm. And that impacts, right? Like, at some point we're going to have to talk about, what do we actually believe? Right. So in that sense, about finances, about kids, how do we want to raise our children? What value systems do we want to instill in them? All of those conversations we have to have.
Okay, but how do you have that conversation if the other person doesn't want to have that conversation?
Well, one, I know you weren't ready to have that conversation. I wasn't even clear about my belief system and my own values. Mm-hmm. So I had to do the work on writing out the values. Like, what do I believe? Like, in that sense, money, family time. Like one thing I cherish is kind of just the immediate family time that we have. All right, like it's and I hold that sacred. But I didn't actually articulate even to myself why that was important. Right? Why, like, what was missing in my childhood that I was trying to rebuild here, right?
Yeah.
So all of that I had to do my own work before I can talk to somebody else. I had to first identify my own values. So things like, I think somebody's kind of mentioned, right? Like, if I want to get the other person to be a better father, what does that even mean, right? Do you know what that means? Right? What does being a better father mean? What does being a better mother mean?
So so I define what I want before I go into the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's a work I know I had to do. I don't know about you. When we sat down and finally had
and to your question, Shaila, how do I move on? How do you move on and do your own thing, but still have support helping with raising your child? So one of the things a lot of mothers do is we take over when it comes to child raising, and we like it our way, and we do it a particular way. And when the other, and I mean, even in same-sex relationships, there tends to be one parent that kind of takes over, right? The domestic duties and the household and the children. And so if that person's taken over, and every time the other person tries to put in their contribution, they're not doing it right? Or they're being judged or criticized or, poked at, well, then eventually that other person's not going to do it at all. There's this great book. It's called How Can I Be Your Lover When I'm Too Busy Being Your Mother? So anybody out there who's having domestic kind of things, like, I do everything, I wash the dishes and I make dinner, Read that book. How Can I Be Your Lover When I'm Too Busy Being Your Mother? That's the name of the book. It's funny, so funny. And that book was a game changer for me as far as how I wanted him to behave in the household, as a father, as a contributor to the domestic duties, as a worker. Like I just let all that go after reading that book, because I realized that I was trying to script my script of what the right dad is into him. And that was based on my own childhood wounding. That's where that was coming from. It's like, I wanted him to be the dad I never had. Hello, that's not his journey. That's on me, right? And so I think the number one answer to your question, Shaila, is you have to get on the same team, right? That we are a team to face raising children. Not, these are my children, and better help me raise them. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. But I think the question keeps on getting back to, how do you get on the same team if one person's not willing to?
You let go. So if you're not on the same team, it's probably because you're in power struggle, right? So you're drawing a line in the sand, and one person just needs to let go.
Explain power struggle.
So power struggle is where he wants it his way, I want it my way. He wants it his way, I want it my way. And it's like this tug of war, and we're pulling this rope, right? It takes so much energy, and it's exhausting, and we're fighting. We might not be fighting out loud. Faizan and I fight with the Cold War, right? Like silent treatment, nobody's talking. That's how we fight. And it's like this back and forth, and somebody's got to put the rope down. And sometimes that will be you, and sometimes that will be your partner. But it's basically whoever wakes up and becomes a grown-up first, that's the person that puts the rope down. Because when we're doing that, we're just acting like children, right? We're like, I want it my way, and I don't want to play with you. I don't want to do what you want me to. That's what that is all about, right? You're not doing it my way. And so one of us has to put the rope down. And when I'm feeling more grounded and more steady and more stable, I'm usually the one who puts the rope down first. And vice versa. When he's the one who's feeling more steady and stable and grounded, he puts the rope down.
How do you not resent putting the rope down? Because there are times one of us is always putting the rope down for a while.
Mm-hmm. So one of the ways... Yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're asking me. And this comes to the concept of mirroring, right? So mirroring, the idea of mirroring is that everybody we meet is a teacher for us, that we have something to learn from them. Everybody, the people we like, the people we don't like, the people we get along with, the people we really can't stand, every single person who comes into our life has something to teach us. Even movie characters have something to teach us, for those of us who like to watch TV. Everybody has something to teach you about yourself, right? About your values, about who you are and who you're not. And here's the thing. We like to say, I am this and I am not that, right? That's how we show up in the world. I am this, I am not that. Mm. And what we do in mirroring work is we say, actually, yes, I'm also that. And I'm also that, and I'm also that. And so because otherwise we're saying, I'm all of these good things, and then all the bad things are over there. And so what we start to do is say, actually, okay, I might not be selfish in the way that I think he's being selfish, but in some areas of my life, yeah, I do have some selfishness, right? Or I might not be inconsiderate the way she's being inconsiderate, but I am inconsiderate when it comes to this other area of my life, right? So you're starting to own it and seeing yourself as a whole person, taking yourself off the pedestal, right? And when we take ourselves off the pedestal, now we can look at each other eye to eye. Right? If I'm looking down at him, he's always going to be wrong. And if I'm looking up at him, I'm always going to be wrong. And so we have to look across at each other, and we can only do that when we own, technical term for this is own your shit. That's the own your shit, right? Bring it back to you about why is it so hard for me to connect with this person? And you'll find a lot of it goes back to your childhood wounding. Sorry. That's where it comes from. Because when we're under duress, when we're stressed and under duress, we go back to our survival brain, right? And our survival brain developed in childhood, and it developed to keep us safe, emotionally safe. And so the way that we reacted, we'll just react that way, right? We'll just do that unless we bring that to awareness and consciousness and try to make some changes about it.
Right. There's this thing, the language that we use sometimes, right? She's just useless. She's not at the same level as me.
She's not there yet.
She's not there yet, right? It's like, I'm going to go do my own thing.
Yeah.
And I'll figure it out, right? It even that language itself, like I know I've had to look at it because I've said it, right? Like especially like with our finances, like I'll figure it out. Our home situation, I'll figure it out, right? And it worked out. Like I'm really not wanting to be a team player. I'm just wanting control. Like I had to look at my control issues at that point. Say, yeah, I'm just wanting to do this my own way. And so the language that we're using. So again, this is not to don't use this as a tool to beat yourself up with. It's a tool to reflect, right? Everything that we're saying to ourselves. The internal language, the internal communication is just as important as what we're doing outside, right?
Absolutely.
So what am I saying about my partner? Maybe not outside to the world, not to the external world, but what am I saying inside? Right? I know I had to look at that, especially like when she was going through her depression. Right? I had to look at that. How am I speaking about my partner to myself?
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Whew, these are some great questions. So keep them coming. Keep some more questions coming as we go through. There's another question that came through that wasn't particularly about relationships, but was an interesting question. And I'm wondering, until we get other questions from the room, we can maybe address this one. So the question is, are there more questions? I'm going to go down. Oh yeah. So there's a question. So what is the connection between diabetes and depression? How can I cope if I have both? That's a great question. So I'm not a medical doctor. I have a PhD in psychology. So I can tell you about the depression side of things, but not necessarily the diabetes side of things. But the connection that I see is this. Louise Hay is an author who talks about the mind, body, spirit connection to different illnesses. And she says diabetes is about losing the sweetness in life. And if you think about depression, it's kind of similar, right? You've lost the sweetness, you've lost the pleasure in life. And so that might be something to look at, is where have I lost the sweetness in my life, and how to bring back some of that sweetness, not through food, because diabetes is about eating too much sugar. Like it's about sugar, right? It's not about the food of sweetness. It's about sweetness in my life, sweet experiences, sweet relationships. How can you cope if you have both? Well, there's lots of people who have depression and another physical illness, right? Or anxiety and another physical illness.
Yeah, and I'm not even good enough to play a doctor on TV, so I'm not going to pretend I can. But like when your physical body is, you're just not physically well, it's hard to get energized for anything else anyways, right? So imagine just getting a flu, right? When you get knocked out and you're like, okay, I have to do something. Like that doing something just takes all of your energy. So I can just imagine having a physical ailment, diabetes or something else, impacting your mood, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just hard to get things done sometimes. So again, not a doctor, can't even pretend to play one. But it really, I feel like in that situation, it starts with self-compassion.
Right.
Having compassion for, you wake up one day and it's just not your day. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Just do what you can.
Yeah. So do you want to?
Yeah, let's look at that.
How long are we going for? About 45 minutes?
Until the questions dry up.
Okay. So if you have questions, ladies and gentlemen who are with us and watching, type them into the chat box. The chat box? No, the comments. Comments? What is it?
Sure.
Whatever. Type it somewhere in whatever you're watching, and so then we can address them.
We have no social networking skills.
Clearly, we're learning. We're learning. We're like the cusp, right? Like we just missed the millennials. Like we were just at the cusp, and so we kind of pretend to be cool and young.
Well, that and right now,
I do.
Also, we're just she pretends a lot. Well, that is just where we're also like kind of like disconnecting from that, right?
Like we're pulling back from social media, but then social media is the way to connect with all of you. So we're trying to figure out that. Yeah. Okay, so the question was not necessarily about relationship. The question that came was, how to change the perspective of scarcity mindset to abundant mindset, and can we explain those concepts in detail? Okay, so Zerofi asked that question. I hope you're here, Zerofi, because we have a treat for you. We're going to talk about that. Let's go.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Scarcity and abundance.
What does that
mean? Define the terms first.
So scarcity means there's not enough, and abundance means there's more than enough. Very simply put, right? So scarcity mindset is where you feel like there's just not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough love, there's not enough support, there's not enough fill in the blank, right? You're seeing the lack, you're noticing where you're lacking all the time, and that's a very stressful way to live. And many people live that way. Many people live that way.
I'm working on it.
I love it so much. So that's the scarcity mindset. Abundance mindset is where you just know that there's more than enough, right? So one of the simple ways that I started trying to cultivate my abundance mindset was I would look outside. So if you look at a tree and you look at how many leaves are on the trees and how many branches are on the trees, like there's so many spots for that little bird to build its nest. Like hundreds of branches, like you can build. And not only is there one tree, there's so many trees. So this little bird that's trying to build its home, it's got so many options. There's twigs all over the ground that it can find, and there's leaves, and they're building their nest, and there's more than enough, right? And so I've noticed when I reconnect to nature, that reminds me that there's more than enough. If I look at things like the waterfall, have you ever stood by a waterfall and watch it, and the water just keeps coming and coming, never stops, just comes and comes, and it's just like, okay, what if life were like that? What if the opportunities were just coming and coming and coming, and our job was to just catch them and move on and catch them? And so it's changing the way that it's changing who you think the provider is. Who is the provider? So is your job the provider? Is your partner the provider? Is your mind the provider? Is your skill set the provider? Or could you take a step back and look at it from a more spiritual perspective? The same force that provides those birds with all the materials they need and all the space they need to build their homes, could that same force also be the provider for me? Could I believe that whatever force created that also created me? And so just like that force, you call it God, you call it Mother Nature, you call it universe, whatever you call it, right? That presence looks after itself. It looks after creation. Creation is looked after until humans interfere and endanger all the species. But, that's a topic for another time. But just like, all of those species have been looked after by nature, why not us too? So when you start asking those types of questions, it slows down the worrying mind, right? It slows down the part of us that's the problem, because our brains have adapted to find problems. That's what they're for. It's like, look around, what's the problem? Look around, what's the problem? The problem is I don't have enough food. Okay, the problem is I'm cold. Okay, the problem is that there's a tiger. Okay, we've solved a lot of our basic survival problems, right? Most of us right now in our house have food that's stored, like a few tins of something, kidney beans. We have so many kidney beans, remember? Kidney bean sale. All these kidney beans, we hardly ever eat kidney beans, but they're there. If we're really hungry one day and we have nothing else, we've got some kidney beans and we've got some rice and we'll be okay, right? And so when all the basic needs are provided, the brain is still going to find problems. And so what are the problems the brain's going to find? This person doesn't like me. This person doesn't understand me.
This person doesn't approve of me.
This person doesn't approve of me. I'm too fat. I'm too short. My marriage isn't passionate enough. So it's like we're designed for that. And so part of it is retraining our brains away from problem finding to gratitude. And gratitude has actually now been scientifically proven to have impact on the ways that our brains, what parts of our brains light up. Neuroscience. So
for those of us that struggle with it, like me, it's like I think I'm getting better at it, but it's like just faking it till we make it. Right? I'm looking at this live stream. We've got 14 people. That's amazing, right?
That's
amazing.
So
I have gratitude, and one of our mission when we moved out here, was to talk about how do we start creating that ripple effect in our societies that we belong to, right? The communities that we belong to. How do we start creating that ripple effect? And so what we're hoping is the 14 people here will work on themselves, and then they'll impact their children or their families.
Or even just one other person.
Or just one other person.
Just one. If you share anything that we've talked about here with one other person, anything you've learned, then that's now creating change, right? Because now suddenly we have 28 people that are listening.
So for us, like I know once we're done, I am already very grateful for the opportunity to live out our mission, right? So whether there was one person that showed up,
that would be our mom. She's always with us, or Salukala.
Yeah, exactly. We'll at least have two, I think.
We've got those two. Anything we do, they're with us. They're here.
So I think at a minimum, we know we're going to be reaching to some people, and we just live that life now, right? And it's those, if we can have gratitude for the small things, then the big things just take care of themselves.
They do. And I know that sounds a little bit new agey, but we've seen it over and over and over. And I don't know any other way to explain it except this. It's something called confirmation bias. You know, I love my psychology. I have to share my psychology. So confirmation bias is this. What you already believe to be true, you will find things to confirm that belief. Okay. So if you believe that, I don't know. Oh, here, I'll give you one of my own. If you believe that seafood is awful, everything about seafood is awful, every experience you have of seafood will be awful. And that one or two experiences that you have of seafood that aren't awful, you'll say, that was just a fluke. And so what will happen is things that confirm what you believe will become really big in your mind, and things that disconfirm it will be very, very little. So if you believe that you are not smart enough, then you will find examples in your life to show you that you're right. Even the examples that show you that you're not right, those examples, they'll get like pushed away into the background. That's how the brain works. And so what we have to do is we have to start tweaking that and say, wait a minute, what are my core beliefs about myself? Because if those are my core beliefs, that's that I want to find confirmation bias for those good things. And so that's where gratitude is so powerful, because gratitude forces you to look for what's right and what's working. And the more you do that, the more you'll see what's right and what's working.
Right. And one of the things I know Saira and I have started doing recently is just setting aside some time to be in reflection, right? Even if we can't be grateful in the moment, we just sit in reflection and just think about, and again, this isn't...
Tell them what that looks like, because that's kind of like...
Well, I mean, right now, one of the things we're doing daily is tapping on things. And, I don't know if you want to explain.
Who knows about tapping?
Yeah, I'm sure Saira's taught that. But we're doing tapping. We take out our journal once in a while. Even reading, right? Read a book that inspires you. Read a book that just makes you feel good.
Even just a novel.
Yeah, it could be a fiction, yeah.
Yeah.
Just take some time for yourself, right? And for those with kids, as it might be hard, by the time they get to sleep, you're ready to just crash. And that's okay. Just take 5 minutes, take 2 minutes, take a minute, whatever you can give.
And those of us who like secretly scroll in the bathroom, that's not me time. Just letting you know, ladies and gentlemen, those of you sitting there scrolling and feel like, oh, I'm getting in my... Yeah, because there's certain things that we do that numb us, and then there's certain things that we do that energize us, right? Scrolling social media tends to numb us, right? But here, when you're with us and you're sitting and you're learning and you're growing, this moment, hopefully, is energizing you, right? So being really thoughtful about how you're spending the limited, precious time that you have in any given day.
And if it's not energizing you, let us know.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Please write it in the comments. Be like, you are so boring. You are draining the life away from us, because we need to know that so we don't do that. I'm assuming that since there's still people, that we're not draining the life out of them. Hopefully.
We might not care either. So you can tell us, we might not care. So that's always...
We'll modify and adjust, but the messages are still going to be coming. So I think that's all our questions. I don't see any more questions anywhere in all the platforms. Do you?
No, I don't.
Anything else you want to share with the people?
I just want to quickly share a few things that are coming up. So there's chai and chat sessions on Saturdays for women that deal with depression and anxiety, or they just want to be in a cool group of women just working on self-growth. So that's on Saturdays at noon Pacific. There's a life support group that's starting for the LGBTQ plus. Sorry, I know I get that wrong all the time.
LGBTQ2 plus.
There you go. Thank you. So there's a support group starting. I think it has started.
It started every second.
But yeah, just go to drsaira.ca, drsaira.ca. At the end, we'll put up the website.
So it's there, right in the bottom of the screen for some people.
As well.
For those who are looking at it.
Yeah, so go there. There is a mom support group.
Yes, Mom to Mom, which is for tired moms. So anybody here who's a tired mom, we still have, I think, a couple of spaces left in that group, and that is run by somebody from our wellness center. Her name's Nishina. She's excellent. That is starting March next week, the 16th, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of that information, if you go to my website and then you click on support groups and then join a group, it'll take you to another page, which is our booking page. And then you can pick the group that you want and the person you want, and email us if you have any questions and you can't figure out how to do that.
There's a addictions support group.
Starting in April.
Starting in April, which is awesome.
It's called Scar Tissue.
And this is not for people dealing with addictions, but it's the family members that have that are supporting their family through addictions. So It's really for support for that. There's a men's group starting at the end of the month. So finally, we'll get the information out pretty soon.
March 25th.
March 25th, I
on
believe.
Thursday evenings.
Right now, that's the date. We'll confirm all of that.
Okay, so March and April, there's lots of groups happening. So if you're watching this on the Dr. Saira page, if that's where or on Instagram, and you want to be kind of part of this community of like, let's talk about how to get better and happier and more content and more grounded and all of that stuff, then join our group. So Dr. Saira's growth group on Facebook. So you just go into Facebook and then the little search bar and type in Dr. Saira's Dr. Saira's growth group. And
Wait, make sure you type like that.
You have to type like Dr. Saira's growth group. And then you have to request to be added. I'm not just taking everybody in that group, just the people who have been participating and connected to me or Faizan already. And so there's a question there that says, how do you know Dr. Saira? So say watch Love Talks or have come to a workshop or follow her on YouTube or whatever, so that we know that you're like not a robot. And then we'll include you in the group. And that's where we're going to be posting these types of things that are coming up. So if you're interested in knowing more, that's where to find it.
And so we'll at the end of this, let's
do a last call. So last call for questions. Last call. Dancing to the hold music. Any no. Come through? How about on Instagram? How do we even
supposedly it's there
comments? Oh, okay. Saima, hi Saima, welcome. Oh, it's so nice. Thank you for being here. We had no idea if anybody would even come. So thank you for coming and spending the last almost hour with us. And we'll be here again next Sunday. So I have a challenge for you. If you enjoyed this whole thing, I have a challenge for you to invite one person to come along with you next week. So they could either be sitting right beside you, someone in your household, or tell someone else who you think would benefit and who would like enjoy it. And then if they don't, then they'll never come back, but maybe they will. And again, the idea is to kind of have that ripple effect and help as many people as we can. And we didn't say this at the beginning, but we don't know everything. That's obvious. I'm sure that's obvious to you. But I pretend a lot. We don't know. So we're also on this path with you, right? We might sometimes know a little shortcut sometimes, but we don't know everything. And so we also hope that you will be helping, you'll be adding your knowledge. So in the growth group, post things like inspire us, show us pictures of things that inspire you or sayings, or ask questions for the group. Let's get everybody talking about it, because it's not just, it's the mirroring piece, right? We all have something for each other. We're all learning from each other. So make sure that you come and you also participate fully. So everyone's saying thank you. So thank you for being here. Shaila, Carrie, Khadija, Aman, Zarofi, Nerm, who else? Saima, Salima, Hussein. Who else is here? I don't know. Whoever else is here whose name I didn't catch, thank you for being here. And if you're watching this after, please feel free to put a comment in whatever platform you're watching it in, and just do hashtag replay before your comment, so we know that you were here live or not or what. And any other questions that you have that we didn't address today, either write them in the comments here or send us a note, and then we'll look at that next Sunday. And that's it, right?
And yeah, stay connected with us. Until next time.
Smile more.
Worry less.
Bye.